Title: If the vendor offers you a taste, ask who the meat belongs to. I've always loved food festivals, the endless stalls, the sizzling smells, the blur of colors and noise. But the one I went to last summer wasn't on any event calendar. I found it by accident while driving home late, a sudden row of tents glowing at the far end of a dirt road I'd never noticed before. Lanterns swayed overhead, casting red and gold light over tables piled high with skewers, steaming bowls, and glass jars filled with, well, I told myself it was candy. There weren't many people. In fact, aside from the vendors, I think I saw maybe 3 other visitors, each walking slowly with plates in their hands, chewing silently. Something about their faces made me uncomfortable, blank, almost peaceful, but their eyes were glassy and too wide. The air was thick with the smell of grilled meat, savory and sweet at once, the kind that worms its way into your brain and makes you hungrier with every breath. One of the vendors, a man with slick, dark hair and a face that looked powdered, called me over. His stall was different. The table was covered in a black cloth, and the skewers he held were longer, tipped with something that glistened under the light. He smiled, revealing perfect, gleaming teeth. "First taste is free," he said, holding one out. The smell hit me like a punch, rich, fatty, mouth-watering. My stomach growled even though I'd eaten less than an hour ago. I reached for it, and that's when he leaned forward and whispered, "Ask who it belongs to." His breath was cold against my ear. I pulled my hand back, startled. His smile didn't falter, but his eyes were fixed on me in a way that made my skin crawl. "Always ask," he said again, "or you're the next dish." I laughed nervously, pretending I understood the joke, but my feet had already started to move backward. That's when I noticed something strange about the other stalls. No vendor seemed to be cooking. The skewers, the bowls, the pastries. They were all just there, ready, steaming hot, but no one was stirring a pot or flipping anything on a grill. And the visitors, the ones I'd thought were just other customers, were now standing behind the stalls, their eyes dull, holding out plates to the few new arrivals drifting in. I realized they weren't eating anymore. They were serving. The man with the slick hair tilted his head, studying me like a chef deciding whether an ingredient was ripe enough to use. "We're always hungry here," he said softly. "And you smell fresh." I turned and ran, weaving through the stalls. I didn't look back, but I swear I could hear footsteps behind me, slow, steady, unhurried. Like they knew I'd tire before they did. When I finally made it to my car, the air outside the market felt colder, cleaner, like stepping out of a dream. But the smell stayed in my nose for days. It made normal food taste wrong, bland, almost offensive. And last night, I swear I saw one of the glassy-eyed visitors from the festival standing across the street from my apartment, holding a skewer in their hand, waiting. Rules to survive. 1. If a vendor offers you free food, ask who it belongs to. If they don't answer immediately, leave. 2. Never eat from a stall where no one is cooking. 3. If the customers stop eating and start serving, you've already been noticed. 4. Don't breathe too deeply, the smell makes you easier to track. 5. If you see them outside the festival, it's already too late to run. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those skewers, the meat glistening in the lantern light, the slick-haired vendor's teeth, the frozen smile of the glassy-eyed servers. I kept telling myself it was just my mind replaying a bad experience, but sometime after midnight, I heard the sound of footsteps outside my window. Slow. Deliberate. I live on the 2nd floor, so it wasn't like someone was just passing by. They were pacing along the narrow balcony outside my apartment, where only tenants should be. I crept to the window and peeked through the blinds. One of them was standing there, bathed in the dim orange glow from the street lamp across the road. It was a woman this time, her head tilted just enough for the shadow to hide her eyes. In her hand, she clutched a skewer. Even from behind glass, I could smell the meat, hot, sweet, and wrong. My mouth watered involuntarily. She raised the skewer slightly, as if offering it to me. Then, in one slow, impossible movement, she slid the entire thing into her mouth, wood and all, chewing steadily as if it were soft bread. I shut the blinds and locked every door, but the pacing didn't stop. Eventually, it was joined by another set of footsteps. And another. By 3 a.m., it sounded like half a dozen people were out there, walking, stopping, breathing in unison. I could hear the scrape of wood skewers against the railing, the faint wet sound of chewing. I stayed huddled on the couch, phone in my hand, but I didn't call the police. I couldn't explain what was happening without sounding insane, and worse, I didn't want anyone else to come here. When the sun rose, they were gone. But on my front door, Skewers were stuck into the wood, perfectly spaced, their pointed ends buried deep. Each one had a piece of meat still on it, but it wasn't grilled anymore. It was raw, fresh, and still warm to the touch. The next day at work, I kept catching the smell again. Faint, but present. In the elevator. In the hallway. Even in my car. By evening, I saw the first poster. It was tacked to a street pole just a block from my apartment, "Midnight Feast, one night only." The paper was aged, almost yellow, but the ink was fresh. My hands trembled when I noticed the date, tomorrow. No location was listed, just an arrow pointing down a street that didn't exist on any map I'd ever seen. That night, I woke up to the sound of my door unlocking. Not forced. Not kicked. Just turned, as though by someone who had the key. I grabbed a kitchen knife and stood in the dark, barely breathing. The door creaked open an inch, then stopped. I could hear something wet dripping onto the floor. A whisper slipped through the gap, familiar, low, almost tender. "You smell fresh." And then the door closed. Quietly. Almost politely. But I knew they'd be back. Not tomorrow. Not next week. They'd come when they were sure I'd stopped locking the door. When I was tired enough to forget the smell. When hunger made me curious. And I could feel it already, the craving. That impossible, maddening hunger. It's in me now. And it's only getting worse. I tried to fight it. I stocked my fridge with every kind of food I could think of, meats, sweets, breads, soups, anything to drown out that gnawing urge. But none of it worked. Every bite tasted like ash, every swallow felt wrong. My stomach would twist, clawing at me like it knew I was feeding it the wrong thing. The only time the hunger dulled, even for a second, was when I caught the faint whiff of grilled meat drifting from nowhere, curling under the door, seeping through the vents. By the third day, I was weak, trembling, and drenched in cold sweat. My reflection in the bathroom mirror startled me, my cheeks were hollow, my eyes glassy, my lips cracked and raw. But it wasn't just hunger. It was something behind my eyes, something leaning forward, testing how much of me it could control. That's when I saw it, not in the mirror exactly, but behind it. A shadow with a grin too wide for any human face, its teeth like slick skewers. The smell hit me again, stronger this time, and my knees nearly buckled. That night, I heard the music. Faint at first, like the jingle of an ice cream truck far away, but twisted, slowed down, reversed, stretched into something almost ritualistic. I knew, without knowing how, that it was the festival calling. My body moved before I could stop it, pulling on shoes, walking down the hall, opening the door. The street outside was empty, except for a trail of skewers lying end to end, leading into the night. I stepped over the first one, but my body turned back, compelled, and I picked it up. Warm. Fresh. I followed the trail. At first, the city looked normal. Then the streetlights changed, not flickering, but shifting hue, glowing in deep, blood orange tones. The buildings seemed to lean closer together, as if blocking off the way back. The air thickened, carrying that intoxicating smell until my thoughts blurred into nothing but eat. I walked for what felt like hours, though the sky never changed. Eventually, I saw it, the festival. Lanterns swaying in windless air. Stalls stretching into the distance, their counters lined with gleaming, dripping skewers. And the people. They weren't people. Not anymore. Their faces looked almost human, but their mouths were too wide, too wet, and their eyes too still. They moved in a rhythm, chewing, swallowing, offering food to no one in particular. The slick-haired vendor was there, smiling at me, holding out a skewer that steamed in the air. I didn't want to take it, but my hand reached forward anyway, trembling, my pulse roaring in my ears. As I touched it, I felt something slip inside me, not physically, but deeper, like a hook in my thoughts. And suddenly, I understood. They weren't feeding me to make me one of them. They were feeding me to make me something else. A supplier. My skin crawled as I turned to see them, dozens of them, watching from the edges of the stalls, all chewing in unison, their mouths dripping, their teeth grinding on bone. When I woke up, I was back in my apartment. The door was wide open. My fridge was empty, every scrap of food gone. On the counter sat a single skewer, the meat raw and pale, wrapped in a strip of skin that was unmistakably my own. And now, the smell follows me everywhere. Not faint anymore, it's inside me. My hands shake, my teeth ache, and I find myself watching strangers in the grocery store, wondering how they taste on the grill. I don't know when I'll break, but I know the moment I do, I'll be at that stall, offering someone else their first bite. Because the hunger isn't mine anymore. It's theirs. And they're still feeding.